Welcome to today's webinar hosted by eLotus. We are proud to be your source for quality CU content, having provided educational courses for over 2 decades. Our goal is to help you elevate your knowledge and expand your skill set. With over 250 speakers, 900 courses, and a staggering 3,500 hours of continuing education, we are committed to providing you with the best educational experience possible. I'm Donna Chow, your host and moderator, and I'm thrilled to be guiding you through this session. Today's class, Acupuncture Fundamentals in a Community Setting, Part 2, will be presented by the esteemed Alexa Halsey. The class will run from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time with 4 breaks. We're scheduling lunch around 12 to 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Before we get started, let me highlight some important Zoom features. First, we have the chat room. It's an excellent tool to connect with your fellow colleagues, and I encourage you to set your chat preference to everyone to make it inclusive. Secondly, we have the Q&A box where you can ask your questions to Alexa. Please do limit your questions to relevant topics to keep the session organized and efficient. Lastly, for those who qualify, the CEU quiz will be available the following workday, and I'll send you guys an email out when it's ready. Our speaker today is Alexa Halsey, a renowned acupuncturist and entrepreneur who founded Encircle Acupuncture in Nashville, Tennessee in 2010. Her mission was to make acupuncture services affordable and accessible to more people, and her clinic has since expanded to 2 locations and a team of multiple acupuncturists. Encircle has provided over 200,000 affordable treatments to date and is one of the busiest community acupuncture clinics in North America. Alexa's newest project is Community AcuHub, an online resource center for community acupuncturists. Alexa has been teaching with eLotus since 2021, and you can find her other great presentations on elotus.org. We are honored to have her here today to share her expertise and experience in the field of acupuncture. So let's get started. Alexa, please feel free to take over and share your presentation.
I'm really excited to be here. Welcome back. We had a great discussion yesterday, lots of great questions. Thanks everyone for participating and just being interested in this topic. I'm excited to see so many participants wanting to learn more about community acupuncture. So I see that people are introducing themselves in the chat, so please keep doing that. Tell us where you are joining from. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I want to make sure that I answered all of the questions from yesterday. I think that I did, but I'm not sure. So if you have questions from yesterday that I didn't answer, or if you thought of questions last night, then go ahead and type those into the Q&A. And I will answer some of those now before we really dive into today's material. So yeah, go ahead and type those in the Q&A. And also, while you're introducing yourself in the chat, if you had any insights from yesterday or just any thoughts that you wanted to share, go ahead and type those in the chat as well. So yeah, tell us where you're joining from. Similar to part 1, if there's anything you're hoping to learn, you can type that in the chat as well, or anything that that stood out from part 1. And then I'll look at the Q&A to see if there's any questions from yesterday that I didn't get to. While you're doing that, I'm going to quickly reintroduce myself. I'll go through this quickly since I already went through this in part 1, but just for anybody who's just joining us today and wasn't here yesterday, I've been practicing acupuncture since 2005. And for the first 5 years of my practice, I did private room acupuncture. And in 2010, I opened my clinic Encircle Acupuncture in Nashville, Tennessee. And Encircle has grown and expanded. We have 2 locations and multiple acupuncturists on staff. And we're providing about 30,000 treatments a year in our pre-pandemic peak. We're not quite there now, but we're hoping to move back to that level of providing a lot of treatments. I'm also the co-creator of Open Acu, which is an appointment scheduling and EHR software system designed specifically for acupuncturists. I talked a little bit about that yesterday. and I'll take questions about that today too. I'm also a writer and a podcast host. I have a email newsletter slash blog slash podcast called Notes from Your Acupuncturist. And you can listen to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, and you can read the emails or the newsletter on Substack, and you can sign up to receive an email whenever I have a new post. And I'm always looking for podcast guests because I interview other acupuncturists on my podcast. So if you're interested in coming on the podcast with me, I would love to have you, and I'll share my contact info at the end. And then, as Donna mentioned, my newest project is Community Acu Hub. And this is a work in progress, and it is a resource center for community acupuncturists. Right now, it's really just a website. We have monthly meetups where we all just get together and talk about community acupuncture. And we're also starting to do some lunch and learns where we can learn from each other. And I'm compiling some other free resources. We also have a clinic directory. So if you have a community acupuncture clinic, you can list it for free on Community Acu Hub. It's just a way for all of us doing this work to stay connected and to learn from one another. You can also go to the site to subscribe to our email list to get updates. So that's Community Acu Hub. So why I wanted to teach this course. Again, I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I want to see more community acupuncture clinics. Community acupuncture fills a need for many, many patients. It serves a lot of patients who wouldn't otherwise be getting acupuncture, and it's a great way to increase utilization rates. So it's great for our profession, and it helps a lot of patients. So I'd love to see more. I want to share some fundamental concepts and keys for success and build community. This is an important one because community acupuncture is hard work, and it helps to have a community of other practitioners who are doing the same work that you can learn from and get support from and share with. So that was the whole reason behind Community Acu Hub. So course objectives for part 2. So first, we're going to learn strategies for safely and effectively treating multiple patients per hour in a high volume setting. We're going to learn strategies beyond just acupuncture to support a high volume practice, including patient communication, herbs, other adjunct modalities. We're going to learn marketing and outreach strategies to build and sustain a stable patient base. We're going to consider the long-term goals of a community acupuncture practice and how to fulfill that vision, and develop a list of action items for launching a new community acupuncture practice or revitalizing an existing one. So what to expect from this course? As I said yesterday in part 1, that was the what and why of community acupuncture. We talked about that on the macro level, big picture, why, how it benefits patients, practitioners, and communities, and what it is. And then we talked about that on the individual level as well. What is your why for doing community acupuncture? And what is your clinic blueprint going to look like? So part 2 is going to be how to implement all of that. It's the how of community acupuncture. So we're going to talk about the day-to-day operations, how to see lots of patients, and then the bigger picture how of building and sustaining a practice for the long run. As I said in part 1, there are many ways to have a community acupuncture clinic, and I will be giving examples from my own practice. I also know a lot of other practitioners doing community acupuncture, and I've gotten input from them from this webinar because not every clinic is like mine. We saw that yesterday with some clinic tours. So I'll be presenting information from my own experience, but I've tried to incorporate perspectives from other practitioners doing community acupuncture as well, because there's no singular way to do it. Again, we'll have a couple of breaks, shorter breaks this morning Then we will have an hour break for lunch and then a couple of shorter breaks in the afternoon before we wrap up. Feel free to use the chat to talk to one another, and I might ask for your input, and you can use the chat for that. If you have any specific questions directed to me, then please use the Q&A section for that, so I will be sure to see those. And I'm going to go to the Q&A now and see if there's a couple of questions that have come up. What kind of EMR do you use, electronic medical records? As I talked about yesterday, I use Open Acu, which is the system that I helped create. It's integrated appointment scheduling and EHR. There are lots of options out there, so I encourage people to look around and see what is best for you. But I do encourage everyone to use electronic health records. It's less paper, it's less files to keep track of, it's faster. It's a great way to do your records. Is it possible to do a trial of Open Acu, like a week where I could poke around and see if it covers everything I need? Yes, we do have demo accounts for Open Acu. So just email me. I'll share my contact info at the end, and email me. I'll set you up with a demo account. You can either email me directly, or there's a contact form on the Open Acu website that comes directly to my email inbox. Hi, is the Acu software suitable for outside of the US? We have a couple people using it in Canada. Beyond that, we have not had any customers using it, but we are happy to try to work with you and figure out if we can serve people outside of the US and Canada as well. So again, you can email me and we can talk about that in more detail. Good morning. Can you briefly review how you determine what to charge for additional modalities in case you want to offer that? Great question. I don't do that, so I can't speak to my own personal experience, but from what I understand that other practitioners do, and what I would do if I were to implement that, I would think in terms of time units. So in a community clinic, let's say you're treating 6 patients per hour, so that's a patient every 10 minutes, and let's say you're charging $30 for a treatment. And so that is, you're collecting $30 every 10 minutes for a community acupuncture treatment. So think about if you're doing an adjunct modality, how much time is it going to take away from you being in the community acupuncture room? And then you could price that accordingly. So if you're going to do a cupping session for 10 minutes, that takes you out of the community room for 10 minutes, then you could think about charging an additional $30 for a cupping session. If you're going to spend more than that doing something, then you might want to increase that amount. So if you're adding modalities and doing extra things, that the prices just need to be in line basically with what you're charging for one community treatment and the amount of time that you are spending doing that other thing that's not a community treatment. Okay. That looks like it is it for the questions right now. Oh no, there's one more. Does Open Acu have online scheduling that takes payment for the acupuncture appointment they are making? You do have the ability to require patients to save a credit card on file, and then you can collect that payment immediately with their credit card on file as soon as they check in for the appointment. And you can charge that a credit card on file if they late cancel or if they no-show. So you can charge that in accordance with your cancellation policy. I've seen several community clinics in my area open and then close due to lack of patient volume. How do you get the numbers up ASAP in order to stay in business? That's a great question because you do want to quickly build a patient base. In the beginning, it's all about you want to keep your overhead low and you want to get as many patients in the door as quickly as possible. We are going to spend most of this afternoon talking about marketing. So I'm gonna get into that in more detail because that's a great question. You do have to get busy, that high volume is an essential component. So yeah, just so you all know sort of what to expect for today. This morning is going to be about the how of seeing high volume, how you as a practitioner are going to operate in seeing high volume. So we'll talk about patient communication and body mechanics and all kinds of stuff. We'll also talk about some quick and easy point prescriptions. And then we're going to talk about the whole new patient experience, how to do new patient intakes, what you need to communicate, all of that. So this morning is mostly going to be about like your workflow as an acupuncturist. And then this afternoon, we're going to talk about marketing, and we're going to talk about sustainability, and we're going to talk about next steps in getting started. So I will be talking about building a patient base. And somebody asked, do you find you have seasons of the year where business is high and others where it is low? Absolutely. Most clinics do report that. So a few things. When the weather is really bad, then it's slow because people don't want to get out of the house. Also, sometimes when the weather is really good, then it's also slow because people are outside doing other things besides getting acupuncture. In my region, we tend to be a little bit slow in January and February because that's when the weather is colder, and when it snows, I live in Tennessee, and if we get like 1 inch of snow, people freak out and don't go anywhere. So if it snows just a little bit, nobody comes in. We're used to that. Also, we get a little bit busier in the spring because everybody here has seasonal allergies, and it's really bad in the spring. So we tend to get busier when people's allergies start to flare up. We tend to slow down in July because people go on vacation in July. And here in my area, the schools start back on at the beginning of August, like sometimes even as early as August 1st. So everybody goes on vacation in July, and then they come back in August, and they're back in their flow. So we tend to pick back up in August and stay pretty steady usually through the fall. Every clinic reports different stuff, but there usually are some seasonal fluctuations. Okay, I think that is it for the questions. So let me try to close this Q&A. Well, sorry, 1 second. Let me close this. There we go. Okay. So for a good part of this morning, we're going to talk about how to safely and effectively treat 6 or more patients per hour, because you do have to treat a lot per hour if you're doing community acupuncture. And when I first became interested in doing community acupuncture, this was my biggest question: how in the world to treat a patient every 10 minutes? And the way that I was trained was to treat 1 patient per hour. And then after a while, I got to the point where I could comfortably treat 2 patients per hour and have 2 different treatment rooms going. But anything beyond that just really felt beyond my skill level. But I knew that I was going to have to up my speed skills if I wanted to practice in this way. So here's what I changed in my own clinical approach to allow me to treat a lot of patients in a short amount of time. If you're scheduling 6 patients per hour, that's a patient every 10 minutes. You don't actually have 10 minutes to spend with your patient because, you have to talk to that patient. You have to put in their needles. You're going to have to pull in that time. You're going to have to pull other patients' needles. You have to do your charts. You might have to do some reception work, maybe take care of payments or scheduling. You might need to get some herbs for somebody. You might need to have a snack or go to the bathroom. So really you have about 5 minutes to spend with a patient, and that's 5 minutes to do all of your diagnostic steps, get the information from them, check their pulse, do whatever else you're going to do for diagnosis, and put the needles in and make sure they're comfortable, and then walk away. So here's how we do that in community acupuncture. And I'm going to talk about each of these steps in a little more detail. Um, the workflow in most community acupuncture clinics is very similar to a busy restaurant. So people are constantly moving in and out and at different stages of the experience. So one person is just getting settled in their chair. Another person is sound asleep. Another person is ready to get up and ready to have their needles pulled. Another person is putting their shoes on and walking out of the door. Um, so so you're always sort of keeping an eye on where people are at with their treatment. Um, so here's how we do that. We have streamlined communication, and I'm going to talk about new patient intakes later on this morning. But in general, we have streamlined communication, tried and true point prescriptions, intensive focus, patent herbs only, no extra services, minimal to no lifestyle or nutritional counseling, body mechanics and clinic layout, office systems, patient participation, and self-care. So those are sort of the elements that you're going to use to be able to treat so many patients in a short amount of time. So we'll talk about each of these in a little more detail. So streamlined communication. Like I said, we'll talk about new patient intakes in a little bit. For now, I want to talk more about general communication about your clinic, within your clinic, and when you're conducting just a routine non-new patient visit. So first of all, you have your general brand messaging. So this is anything that's outward facing for your clinic. This is your website, your social media, printed materials like your business card or flyers. This is a welcome email that you send to new patients. These are reminder emails about appointments, texts or phone calls, your outgoing voicemail. All of this needs to send a consistent message, and it needs to quickly convey who you are and what you do. And we'll talk about marketing later, like I said, but you want people to know the basics of what your clinic is all about and how it works before they ever come in, because this is going to save you precious time. You don't have time to explain how you treat patients in recliners in a community room, or how the payments work. People are still going to have questions, but you should try to anticipate most of their questions and try to answer them in multiple ways and multiple times before they ever come in. You also want to communicate about office procedures. You want patients to know how things work at the clinic, because you're going to need their participation to move things along. So these are things like check-in and payment, scheduling appointments, canceling appointments, rescheduling. And generally after 2 or 3 visits, most patients are gonna get it, and they're gonna know the routine, and they're gonna know what to do when they come in. So most patients coming into my clinic, when they come in, the check-in process like literally takes a few seconds if they have their card on file. And if they don't have their card on file, we add a little more time to actually process their payment. But the check-in process is super fast, and then they go right on back to the treatment room and get comfortable. You don't want to, well, okay, first of all, if there's something extra, because there are going to be things that happen outside of the routine of check-in. If it's something extra, like a patient requesting a super bill, you want to be very clear on how that process works, so that patients only have to ask once. And at my clinic, because we have receptionists, they take a lot of responsibility for this type of communication about how things work. If you don't have receptionists, you can communicate that in other ways. You communicate it yourself. You can have handouts. You can post signs at the front desk. You just don't want to leave your patients in the dark about how the process works, and it needs to work the same every time. Your website is going to convey a lot of this. We'll talk more about websites in a bit. I think it's good to send a welcome email to new patients. You might want to do a reminder call to new patients. So a lot of communication before they ever come in. Communication about products and services. If you offer extras, how are you want to have a procedure to quickly communicate how it works. How do they schedule it? What is the cost for it? Why they would want to do an extra service beyond the community treatment. If you things like herbs and retail products, you can have displays with a lot of information. You saw the retail display at my clinic. We have little information cards with all the herbs. We have little signs with staff picks, and a staff member will fill out, why they love yin chow san or something like that. You can also give patients handouts. We have a moxa handout. If we think a patient would benefit from doing moxa, we have a handout that we give them about how to do moxa. So you don't have to sit there and explain to every single person every step of doing moxa. We show them the basics and then give them the handout. And communication during a treatment. So, like I've said, there's minimal talking in community acupuncture. First, you want to know why they're coming in before you treat them. So review your charts. That's going to save you time. I have one acupuncturist who works with me, and she has a dry erase board, and she will write down on her dry erase board at the beginning of her shift, each of her patients, her patient's initials, or maybe what time they're coming in, and then their chief complaint, or if she wants to ask them about something. So she's got this very quick reference chart right there at the desk that she can just look at. She doesn't even have to pull up their records on the EHR. When you get to your patient, you want to focus your questions on their chief complaint and how they're feeling since the last treatment. I ask my patients, how are you feeling? Has anything changed? Has anything new come up? You can feel their pulse while you're doing this. Sometimes patients will stop talking while I'm feeling their pulse because they think they have to be quiet. And I'm like, no, you can keep talking. It's fine. You can even start needling them while they're still talking. If they have questions, what do my pulses say? Just give them short answers. I like to say something like, your pulse says that you're really stressed, or, it's feeling kind of depleted, something like that. You just don't have time to do an acupuncture theory class with them. I love talking about this stuff. I think it's interesting, but we don't have time for it. That's why I started writing and podcasting, because I want to talk about it. Remember that you are the one who takes the lead on communication. Some patients will just keep talking and keep asking you questions, and they just will go on and on. So it's okay to just say something like, I'm going to let you rest now, enjoy your rest, and then you walk away. I like to, before I leave a patient and walk away, I like to make sure everything feels okay. So I'll say, everything feel okay? Do you need a blanket? And then that's it. Then when you're removing their needles, they're going to be relaxed more than likely. So I like to let them just sort of stay in that zoned out, relaxed state. I'll usually say something like, did you enjoy your rest? Did you have a good nap? Something like that. But I don't like to have a really mentally stimulating conversation after they've been resting. So I'll just, ask if they had a nice rest, and then I'll say thank you, and then that's it. It's good to remember that patients are not paying you for conversation. When I started, I just felt the need to fill up the time with a patient with a lot of talking, but it's really not necessary. That's not why they're there. They're not there for your sparkling conversational skills. They're there for the acupuncture. Some of my patients I hardly talk to at all, and it's totally fine. Focus your energy on doing a great treatment. So another way that you facilitate high volume is tried and true point combinations. We're going to talk more about this later, so I'm going to skip this for now. Okay, another way to facilitate high volume is intensive focus. So first of all, you want to focus your treatment strategy on the chief complaint. Don't try to do everything all at once. Often a patient is going to have many things that they want to work on. I had a patient who would come in. She would come in right after work, and while she was at work, she would print up a name tag, like a sticky name tag, and like list all of her complaints on her name tag, and then she would wear her name tag in. It was very funny. I think that she did it mostly to make me laugh, and it always did make me laugh. But people are sometimes going to have a long list of things, and you don't have to treat everything all at once. It's actually better not to try to treat everything all at once, because you can just really scatter their chi. So you want to focus on what's complaining the loudest. You can ask them what's bothering the most. You can assess their pulse and see, okay, what is most, feeling most out of balance in their pulse? What meridian is really screaming through the pulse? You can also just go on instinct. That's fine too. If you focus intensely on what is bothering them the most, then often the other ancillary stuff is going to resolve too. Because we know that we treat patterns. We don't treat individual symptoms. We treat patterns. So look at the big picture too. Also, needle economy. Less can be more. I like to use points that will cast a wide net and will do lots of different things with one needle. One of my coworkers talks about using as few needles as possible and as many as necessary. I think I mentioned yesterday, Chen Chengzu, who is a Song Dynasty physician, said that all diseases could be treated with stomach 36. So why not use stomach 36? Think about what is the least number of needles and points that you can use to help this patient. I think that patients often need fewer needles than we think that they do. And also fewer needles is faster for you. You also want to focus your energy on the patient in front of you. You only get a few minutes with this patient. So you need to make those minutes count. And everybody else in the room should disappear while you're treating that patient. And here's a mistake that I would make early on when I started doing this work. I was so worried about trying to keep track of everyone coming in and going, and does someone need me? How am I going to make sure all of these people are okay? So I would sit down with a patient to do their treatment, and then I would sort of like look around. Okay, look at this patient. Oh, look over here. Are they okay over here? Okay, look at this patient again. Oh, I heard something. What was that? Look around. Okay, now come back to this patient. And it really scattered my focus. And so number one, it ended up taking more time with that patient in front of me because I kept getting distracted. And also they weren't getting the best of me. They weren't getting the best treatment. They weren't getting all of my focus. So what I do now is I'm with a patient and I'm with them. And I don't look at anybody else. And if I hear something, I just don't worry about it. And I don't think about anything else other than what this patient needs. And then when I'm done, I stand up and I look around. And right there, and I scan the room. And I look to see if anybody needs me. And then I can take care of those people who need me once I stand up and scan the room. But don't be distracted from the patient in front of you, because there's going to be all kinds of things happening around you. People coming, people going. The phone is ringing and you hear it in the background, or we have a bell on our door and the door opens and the bell rings, or somebody's phone goes off because they didn't silence their phone. Like all of these things are going to be happening. You have to not worry about any of that. So you also want to think about how you prioritize in the treatment room, sort of your order of operations. And here's mine. I prioritize, first of all, who needs their needles pulled. If somebody needs their needles pulled and somebody's waiting for me to treat them, I pull needles first, because it doesn't take as long to pull needles as it does to put them in. And the person who is ready to be pulled, they might be, on a schedule and need to leave right now. They might have to go to the bathroom. Something might be hurting them. So they go to them first, and then you go to that person who is ready for you to treat them. I talked a bit about this yesterday, but at my clinic, we prioritize the people who arrive on time for their appointment. If somebody's late, they wait. If somebody's early, that's fine. We'll let them relax in the treatment room, but they also wait. And then finally, your last priority is charting. It's nice to be able to keep up with charting during the shift if you can. And I try to do that, but I can't always do that. Sometimes I'm just too busy and I have to do charts at the end of the shift. I think that you shouldn't make a patient wait while you're doing charting. If they're there, if they're ready for you, take care of them. Don't make them wait. Save your charts for the end. All right. Another way that we facilitate high volume is by using patent herbs only. Custom formula writing is very time consuming. I had very early on in my community practice, I had another practitioner working with me, and she liked to write custom herbal formulas, and then patients would order them through a company that would mix them up and send them. And this acupuncturist was spending so much time doing, writing these custom formulas, but we weren't charging for her extra time of doing that. So she just ended up like tacking a lot of extra work time because it's time consuming to do that. So if you love writing custom herbal formulas and you're good at it and you want to keep doing that, then you can, but you want to charge for it. Add on, again, figure out how much time is that going to take? What is that equivalent to in terms of, your time in the treatment room, and then charge accordingly. We do patent herbs at my clinic, and there are great patent herbs out there. There's great options. So we do this in a couple of ways. We have self-prescribed options. And you saw that yesterday on the video. We have a retail area. It has the descriptions. These are things that are safe for anyone to take. I think of this as like herbal first aid, like curing pills, yin chow, some herbal teas, things like that. Patients are really interested in this kind of stuff. They enjoy learning about it. And if you display it with some information, it's empowering for them because they feel like they can try these things out and use them. And it's also very easy passive income for the clinic. So it's good to have some self-prescribed options. And then we have practitioner prescribed options as well. I talked a bit about this in part one. My approach is that I'll usually do a few treatments first to see how they respond. And then if we're not really seeing the progress, or sometimes a patient will request herbs, and then I'll incorporate herbs. At my clinic, we usually don't do a separate consult if we're going to give them herbs, because we've already gotten to know them over the course of a few treatments. That's also why I don't like to do them right at the beginning, because maybe I need to get a little more information from this patient about really what their pattern is. So we keep a limited supply or limited stock of commonly used formulas. We love the evergreen formulas. Our patients love the evergreen formulas. They're very effective. So we do stock a lot of those. We use some other lines as well. And sometimes we'll do special orders, and we have a process for special orders too. You need to have a process for everything. Every now and then a patient will just want an herbal consult and no acupuncture. And so we'll just schedule that as like we would a new acupuncture patient, and do a consult in our private area. So we also think in about no extras. I've talked a bit about this. Some community acupuncturists call this the vanilla no sprinkles approach. There are a lot of techniques under the umbrella of our medicine, but you do not have to provide all of them in your clinic. I think of it as avoiding feature creep, and feature creep is something that happens in software development when new features just keep getting added to a piece of software, and then at some point it becomes just too much and the whole system kind of breaks down. We don't want to have feature creep in a community acupuncture clinic, because we really do like to focus on acupuncture, because acupuncture is very, very effective. Sometimes there can be so many options that it overwhelms the patient. They don't know what they should focus on, and it can kind of dilute your message. So I encourage people to focus on acupuncture, especially when you're just getting started with community acupuncture. If you focus on just doing acupuncture, I promise you will get very good at doing acupuncture because you're doing so much of it. Sometimes a patient will say something to me like, "Oh, you've got a magic touch with acupuncture," and it's very sweet of them to say something like that, and I'll usually just kind of laugh it off. But I kind of do, and it's not because I am naturally gifted as an acupuncturist. It's just because I've done it a lot. So if you want to become the best acupuncturist you can be, make that your tool of choice. For other services that consume more time, these things are great, but they do take more time. So you have some options. If somebody wants e-stem or gua sha or cupping or Tui Na, you can refer out. There are probably other practitioners in your area who would love to provide these services for your patients. They will often end up referring back to you. That happens with me. If an acupuncturist in my area who does private treatments, if they have a patient who needs to come in a lot, but the patient's on a budget, they'll send them to community acupuncture and then maybe follow up with them for a private room session and a longer consultation every 6 weeks or so. That happens a lot. You can also teach patients some self-care techniques. We love ear seeds, and so we sell ear seeds, and we have little ear seed guides that patients can take pictures of with their phone so they can see where to put the ear seeds, or sometimes we will just draw it for them on a little diagram. So if somebody's traveling, I'll often tell them to buy a pack of ear seeds and show them where to put the ear seeds, and then they've got a great self-care tool. I talked about Moxa, how we have a handout for that. And again, another option is to offer it separately and charge accordingly. What you want to avoid is saying something like, "Oh, we've got a little extra time today, so why don't I do some cupping on you since we have some extra time?" Because what's going to happen is that then the next time they come in and if you don't have extra time to do cupping, if you're going to do something extra, then you need to schedule extra time and you need to charge extra. My advice is not to do anything extra when you're starting out. Just develop your acupuncture workflow first and get really comfortable with that. Get in your flow and get in your groove with that. Wait until later to think about incorporating other services. You might find that you don't really need them, or that you don't want to do them because you're getting great results with acupuncture and you're happy with your workflow. And if you do decide that you want to do them, you'll have a much better sense of how to incorporate them in a way that isn't disruptive to your existing workflow. So another way that we facilitate high volume is minimal to no lifestyle and nutritional counseling. I talked a bit about this in part 1, but I'll talk some more about it. Chinese medicine has a lot of wisdom to offer, absolutely. So I'm not saying not to share that. But as community acupuncturists, we have to get creative about how we share that, because we don't have time to share that in a one-on-one conversational setting, face-to-face with a patient. So there's many ways to share that outside of, sitting in a one-on-one counseling style session. You can share that with patients in an email newsletter. We send out a monthly email newsletter, and sometimes we will include, tips on how to keep your sinuses clear during allergy season, or, simple acupressure techniques that you can do on yourself, or, where to place ear seeds. There's all kinds of things that you can communicate. I've seen clinics send out recipes for, seasonal dishes using, the um, the fruits and vegetables that are in season at that time of year, or simple herbal recipes that you can do. There's so much education that you can do. So yeah, you can send that out in an email newsletter. You can have printed materials. Like I said, we have a Moxa handout. It's really simple, but it goes a long way. Moxa is great. I love Moxa, and there are a lot of patients who can benefit from it, but they can easily do that at home on their own. Um, you you can use social media for that as well. I see a lot of clinics doing, highlighting acupuncture points on social media and instructions for acupressure. You can have YouTube videos. I started making a bunch of YouTube videos at the start of the pandemic for acupressure. And patients love those, and you can share them. You share them on YouTube, share them in your newsletter. You can do Qigong sessions via Zoom or on YouTube. So you can really create all kinds of resources and build an entire resource center for your patients. And then it's also nice because they can do it on their own time too. They don't have to learn all this stuff in the presence of you sitting there in your office. They can do it on their own. You can do writing, start a podcast. There's lots of ways to educate people. Also, all of this extra stuff that you do, if you're doing education via YouTube, social media, email, whatever, this is all marketing for your clinic. So it serves kind of a dual function of education and marketing. You want to avoid unsolicited advice. The first time I ever got acupuncture, I was a prospective student at an acupuncture school. So I became interested in going to acupuncture school before I ever had an acupuncture treatment. And so I thought, well, I should probably try this if I'm going to learn how to do it. And so I went and got a treatment at a student clinic at an acupuncture school. And it was a one-on-one private room session. It was very long. I think I was there for 2 hours. And I saw a student intern, and she just gave me all of this stuff, all of this advice, things I had to do. And then she brought in her supervisor, and then her supervisor was kind of lecturing me about how I needed to stop drinking orange juice and stop drinking green tea, and I shouldn't make any major life decisions within the next year. And I'm like, I'm about to maybe go to acupuncture school. That's a major life decision. I had not come there to have coaching and counseling on my whole life. I just wanted to try acupuncture. So we have to understand that not all of our patients are coming there to learn and be educated and make a radical life change. Some of them just want some relief from their shoulder pain, or they're stressed and they want to relax. So we don't want to give them more than what they're asking for. We want to avoid also burdensome homework. Most patients already have enough stuff on their to-do list. Sometimes coming to acupuncture every week takes a great deal of effort on their part. They might have to take time off of work. They might have to arrange childcare. They might have to, not pay for something else in order to pay for acupuncture, or not do something else in order to have the time to go to acupuncture. So I never want someone to feel like they're not doing enough already. You don't usually know enough about what their life is like to know if they even have the resources to implement all of these wonderful lifestyle changes that you're recommending. And you don't want patients to feel discouraged or overwhelmed. If someone asks me if I have advice for them, or they ask me what else they could be doing, I will often speak about it in general terms, and then let them sort of do some more homework. So, like a lot of patients with pain will ask, like if they need to change their diet. And so I'll just usually recommend that they look into an anti-inflammatory diet. And maybe I'll send them like a link to, an article about an anti-inflammatory diet. That's a very general piece of advice, but it's one that a patient can easily take and then implement on their own terms. There's a lot of information out there about an anti-inflammatory diet. They can easily find that information and advice. They don't need me to go through every step of it, and then they have some more ownership of it, and they're more empowered to make those changes because they're doing it on their own terms, and not because I've told them to do that. Also, if somebody really needs a lot of guidance, like in-depth guidance, I will refer them out. Maybe to another acupuncturist or a functional medicine practitioner. If they need something super in-depth, that's just not my forte. So, body mechanics and clinic layout. This is another big one for how we facilitate high volume. Simple things like how you hold the needles can go a long way. I did some coaching with one of my acupuncturists who was a relatively new practitioner. And she kept falling behind. So she would work a 4 or 5 hour shift, and by the end, she would have patients waiting for her because she would be running late. She would never be able to do any of her chart notes during the shift. She would have to do all of that. I really don't like when patients have to wait on us. Their time is important, so I want to get to them right away. So I wanted her to speed up. So one day I just sat in a recliner during one of her shifts, and I just watched her. And she was spending about 6 or 7 minutes on average with each patient. And I told her, if you can shave off 1 to 2 minutes per patient, you won't fall behind. And so I gave her some pointers, and she was easily able to incorporate these suggestions, and she did it, and she shaved off 1 to 2 minutes, and now she never falls behind. So it was not anything that she had to radically change. It was more just body mechanics. She was worried that she would have to give up an essential part of the exchange between her and the patient, but she didn't. She just needed to tweak a few things. So how you hold the needles is one thing. I'm going to show you, I'll show you how I do it. This acupuncturist that I coached, she was like taking 1 needle at a time and putting it in a patient. That takes too long. So I'm going to move my camera a little. I'm going to show you. So I use 10 packs. So I just open the 10 pack and get 10 needles out at a time, and then I sort of like flatten them out so they're all like in a row. And then I hold them in my left hand because I'm right-handed. And then, let's pretend like this is my patient. I hold the needles in my left hand, and with my right hand, I do the treatment. So I don't use guide tubes, I freehand. So I'll just do this, and then get another one, and do this. And then sometimes I hold them between these 2 fingers and do that. I'm always touching the patient with my left hand and putting the needle in with my right hand. And I'll sort of like change how I grip the needles with my left hand, based on the body part that I'm treating. And then just like simple insertion. Ta-da. 10 needles in. So that's how I do it. And then let me show you how I remove the needles. So when I remove the needles, I get a cotton ball and I tuck it under this finger, and then I just take them out with my right hand and then hold them in my left hand, just like this. Super fast. And I kind of like point the needle upwards so I don't give myself a needle stick when I'm transferring it from my right hand to my left hand. Like that. If somebody bleeds, I have the cotton ball right there. I can dab, throw the cotton ball away, get a new one, and ta-da, needles out super quick. So I recommend using the 10 packs. Singles take too long to open. You want to think about order of needle insertion. So my acupuncturist who I was coaching on this, the way that the order in which she inserted the needles seemed kind of random to me. What I do, I start at the top and I work my way down. So I do points on the head first, and then I do one arm and then the other arm, and then I do one leg and then the other leg. So top to bottom. Some of my coworkers, they do it in a circle. They start at the top. They do right arm, right leg, left arm, and finish where they start. I think that's probably actually even a little faster than how I do it, but I'm set in my ways. But yeah, how you move around the patient's body and the order in which you insert the needles helps up your speed skills. Also, I am a proponent of freehanding. It is much faster and it's less repetitive strain on your hands because you're not having to, take the needle, get it into the guide tube, and then do that. It's just in. So if you don't freehand, practice, try it out. When I started doing community acupuncture, I was using guide tubes, and then I started freehanding on some like low stakes points that I knew probably weren't going to hurt people freehanding. And now I freehand every point. The only point I use a tube on is if I'm doing kidney 1, but everything else I freehand. You also want to have everything within reach. We saw that on some of the videos yesterday. Most clinics are going to have needle stations so that when you're with a patient and you're sitting with them at their chair, everything you need is right there. You don't have to get up and walk to the other side of the room to get your needles or to get your cotton balls or whatever. So some clinics have like little individual stations. I've seen some clinics that have like a table in the center that's easy to access. I know of some acupuncturists who will wear an apron and they've got all their stuff in their apron and then they just take it with them. Some acupuncturists will use a cart that they roll around from one patient to the next. So there's different ways to do that, but you want to stay in your bubble of you and the patient. Don't leave that bubble to get more needles or whatever you need. Have it all right there. You want to use rolling stools for sure. Save your back. Do not bend over your patients all day. Sit in a stool and bend from your waist. Some clinics will put rollerblade wheels on their rolling stools, which I've heard is fabulous, and it's smoother and faster. So that's something you could try. And then you want to think about chair layout. So what we do at my clinic, patients come in, they choose their own chair. They sit wherever they like. And then we do the treatment, and then on our acupuncturist table, we have a dry erase board, and we write down what time they need to leave, or when either what time they've asked us to take out their needles or when their hour is up. And so we write it down, and we're constantly checking that board to see who needs to leave next. I like to have our acupuncturist table in the treatment room. Like I said, it just keeps my chi in the treatment room. And then I'm not having to walk out of the treatment room to do my charts or, whatever. I'm just in there all day. So yeah, chair layout is important too. There are a number of clinics who do what we call the circle method. And we don't do this at my clinic, but a lot of clinics swear by this, and it allows you to move very quickly from one patient to the next, and it cuts down on wasted time moving across the treatment room. And people say that it helps with their mental focus too. And so this is probably a really good method for practitioners who have ADHD or OCD, because you just move patients around in a circle, and it's very, very streamlined. So this idea was originated by a practitioner named Mayo Wardle at Phoenix Community Acupuncture, and she told everybody about it, and lots of clinics use it now. So how it works is that the chairs are arranged in a circle in your treatment room, or roughly in a circle. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. And then seats are assigned. So each chair is numbered. And so when a patient comes in and they check in, the receptionist will tell them what chair they're going to go to. And then they sit in a logical order around the circle. And then the practitioner treats patient in chair number 1, and then moves to patient in chair number 2, and then to chair number 3 and number 4, and so on, and just moves around the circle. And then by the time they get back to the beginning of the circle, it's time for patient in chair number 1 to be done. And so then they pull needles in chair number 1, pull needles in chair number 2, number 3, and so on. And then in the meantime, new patients are coming in and filling in the chairs that got vacated. So it's just constantly moving in a circle the whole day. Needles are pulled after a certain set rest time. So it might be 30 minutes, it might be 45 minutes, whatever, but everything just unfolds in a very logical step-by-step way. Some clinics, like I said, some clinics swear by this and say that it has really helped them to increase their capacity to treat more patients, because it cuts down on time moving around the room or keeping track of people in the room at various stages. You just know where people are going to go because they're all in a circle. So I asked one of the practitioners who uses this method to kind of describe how it works specifically. And so this is what she said. She said, when we had a receptionist, she would give folks a dry erase card with their chair number and pull time on it. And then they would bring it back into the treatment room, sit in the chair with the same number, and we would put the card at the foot of the chair so we could see the pull time. So yeah, patient comes in with their card that the receptionist has given them, and they just put that card at the foot of the chair. She says, now with no receptionist, we have a clipboard on our needle cart with a seating chart, a dry erase seating chart. Patients have been oriented to know we seat in a counterclockwise circle, and they take the next available chair. So this, again, is that patient communication. So they know the drill. The patients know, okay, I'm going to sit in the whatever chair is free, and it goes in a counterclockwise direction. We point them to a chair if they seem confused, because not everybody will get it. We write pull times on the clipboard. If someone needs pulled out of order at a different time, I write it bigger and put a star next to it. Since all of our chairs are the same and we have lighting and such fairly central, no one really cares. Occasionally we will make an exception, i.e. a patient with hyperacusis and can't be near the music because it's physically painful, and seat a patient out of order, but it's a rarity, so easy to roll with. I think this is a great method if you're getting started. At my clinic, we have patients who definitely have their favorite chairs, and if I started assigning seats, I don't know that our patients would be very happy with it because they're used to being able to pick out their own chairs. But if you're just getting started and you can just train patients that this is how it works, then it's a great way to easily move around your treatment room and do it in a way that keeps you super focused. So something to think about. Next is office systems. Think about what can you automate and what can you simplify. So I think of office systems as these are like all of the involuntary functions of your body. This is like the breathing, the heart beating, the digestion. Your body, for the most part, is going to run on its own without you intervening. And it should be the same for your clinic. So it's all about streamlining and simplifying and having a system for everything. So think about what you can automate. Appointment scheduling, online scheduling means less time answering and returning phone calls. Most of our patients schedule online. They love it. They don't want to pick up a phone. Having a payment system connected to your scheduler is a great layer of automation if it's not connected to your scheduler, you still need an easy payments system. Having electronic health records means no pulling and filing of physical charts, and patients complete their paperwork ahead of time. So there's lots of things that you can automate, lots of processes. And then think also about what you can simplify. Like I said, we have an ear seeds display that has ear seed diagrams that people can take pictures of. When we first were doing this ear seeds thing, we're like, okay, how are we going to tell people what seeds, what points to use? And, are we going to give them little charts to go along with their ear seeds? And then, one of our core values is to keep it simple. It's like, okay, what's the simplest way to do this? Everybody has a phone with a camera on it. They can just take a picture with their phone. So that's just an example. Also, simplification means that if you have multiple people doing the same job, they all need to be trained to do it in the same way. Another example of how to simplify is what some clinics use when they don't have a receptionist, and we call this the invisible receptionist. It was a system that was developed for clinics in the early stages before they're financially able to hire a receptionist. Some clinics will outgrow the invisible receptionist and eventually hire. Other clinics like it and they continue using it even as they grow. I used it at my clinic when I first opened, and we had a payment box and we had envelopes, and people would write their name on the envelope, drop their payment into the envelope, and drop the envelope into the box. And at the end of the day, I would go in and enter all of the payments on a spreadsheet. That was before we had online scheduling. Another clinic I know, they use just a little slip of paper that is laminated, and they use dry erase markers. So they have a patient clip the laminated piece of paper to their payment and write their name on it. So, if I'm going to see this person, I'll write my name on the dry erase piece of paper, clip it to my, $40 payment, and then drop it in the payment box. So that's another way to do it. And then you can enter payments at the end of the day. Encourage patients to schedule online. That's another way to simplify. For clinics that don't have a receptionist, also using this invisible receptionist, generally they will return any phone calls at the end of the shift and have the outgoing voicemail describe what the procedure is for scheduling online, and encourage patients to schedule online and to also check the website for any questions. So another element is patient participation. You definitely need their participation to facilitate all of this high volume that you're doing. They need to understand that they're part of a collective and that their actions affect everyone else who gets treated at your clinic. And this is mostly an implied agreement. Patients are going to learn this by observing how your clinic works and being a part of it. Like I said, most patients are usually going to get it after a few treatments. There's always going to be some who don't. And there's going to be patients who want special treatment, and it's up to you to decide how you're going to accommodate that or whether you're going to accommodate that. Sometimes it's not a big deal. For example, we have a patient who has been coming to the clinic for years and always wants to pay afterwards. I don't know why, and we have always taken payment up front since day one, and this patient always wants to pay afterwards, and it's fine. We just let her pay afterwards, and we have a little note on her patient account so that everybody knows that she pays afterwards, and it's fine. Other times we have to hold a boundary with a patient because their actions affect other patients. So, if somebody is chronically late, we will sometimes turn them away, because if they're too late, they're going to impact other people getting treated. Speaking of patients being late, patients being on time is a big way that they participate. And this is one area that we really emphasize at my clinic. Like I said, if they're more than 15 minutes late, then we tell them that we might have to reschedule them and can't accommodate them. So, you can decide how you want to handle that, but we operate on a tight schedule. Um, Patients need to know the process for scheduling, for check-in, for payment. We don't schedule appointments via Facebook or email. There's just too much back and forth. So patients need to know what to do, how to schedule, how to check in, how to pay. All of this is going to move them through the clinic faster. You need patients to arrive ready for their treatment. We encourage people to leave the outside world behind when they come in. Sometimes they'll arrive on time, and it'll take them another 5 minutes to finish sending a text or finding their earbuds or changing their clothes. And so we try to gently communicate to them that they need to not just be on time, but they need to be on time and ready for their treatment at their appointment time. Patients knowing the drill is really helpful. So when patients come in, we tell them, go ahead and take off your shoes and socks, roll up your sleeves and pant legs, put all your stuff in the basket on the floor next to your chair. You don't want to have to remind patients of this every time. So you need to communicate like this is what you do every time. Because it might take them a few minutes to do that, and you don't want to have to sit there and wait on them while they're doing that. Patients also need to know where to direct questions. What if somebody has a bunch of questions either before or after their treatment? You can direct them to your website. You can have a receptionist answer them. You can refer them to other resources. Do you want patients to have your email address? I do not. We don't share any clinic email addresses because it's too much to try to keep track of patient emails coming in and answering them and all of that. I don't want to spend my life emailing. Sometimes the patient will have a lot of questions after a treatment, and I'll say, we can talk about that more the next time you come in. Sometimes patients will ask a lot of questions just because they're nervous. And over time, they'll stop asking so many questions because they'll understand that you don't have time to answer them. And they also will just sort of relax more. Just know you don't have to answer every single patient question, and you don't have to answer it with a long answer. You can give simple, very brief answers, and it's perfectly fine to say something like, I'm going to go take care of my next patient now. It's fine. It's fine to do that. And then finally, one more area is self-care. We'll talk about this, and then I will take some questions and we'll do a break. This is a job that asks a lot of you. You have to show up ready for a full shift. You have to show up ready to be busy. If you're not, then you won't be busy. And, energetically, you have to create the space in yourself to treat a lot of patients and help a lot of patients and do a lot of acupuncture. If there's something going on with you, that can be reflected in your practice. That's why one of our core values is to bring your best. This is not a job that you can phone in. It's just not. This is also why most community acupuncture shifts are 4 or 5 hours, because it is 4 or 5 unrelenting hours of constant movement, constant interaction with patients. It's a lot. So you have to have some tools for yourself. Something to keep up with the physical demands. There's a lot of walking, and there's a lot of changing positions. You're going from sitting to standing to sitting to standing. You're bending over to reach a point that is, maybe gallbladder 20. You have to bend and twist a little to reach, or maybe you have to bend over a little bit to reach a point on the foot. Sometimes you have to help people with recliners. Not every recliner handle works all that great, especially if it has been used thousands of times. We have recliners that we've had since the beginning for 13 years. I don't know how they're still working. They've been used so much. But so sometimes you have to help people with recliners. Like, all of that demands something of you physically. So how do you keep up with that? Emotional demands. I joke with patients that I'm like a bartender. People sit down and tell me all of their problems. And then I serve up something to help them feel better. So part of our job is to hold space for people, meaning that we recognize our own limitations and we don't rush in to try to fix everything. On the flip side, you can expect a lot in return from your patients. You get a lot of gratitude. There's a lot of emotional sweetness from your patients. We get to have a different kind of relationship with them than they might have with their doctor. We see them way more often. We build a connection with them. So it's a really beautiful relationship that we get to have. But we do have to give of ourselves too. So it's good to have practices in place to care for yourself physically and emotionally. It is possible to burn out with this job. And when you're getting into burnout territory, you won't have the capacity energetically to see as many patients. You just won't. Your schedule will empty out. It's happened to me. It's happened to every acupuncturist that I work with and a lot of other acupuncturists that I know. It just happens. So personally, here are my self-care practices. I prioritize sleep. I try to get 8 hours of sleep a night, and I make that a priority. For me, eating meals on schedule is a big one. I eat 3 meals a day and I don't snack. I eat a big meal before a shift. Most of my shifts are in the afternoon and go until 8 at night. So I eat a big lunch and then I don't eat anything for the next 8 hours until I eat dinner. That's what works for me. I think I've kind of trained my body to do that. If in the past when I have snacked in the middle of a shift, I find that it kind of slows me down. Your mileage may vary, but that is what works for me. I eat my meals on schedule. And then what I do for fun and for physical exercise is dancing. I love to dance. I do ballet. I do some form of that almost every day of the week. It helps my back stay flexible. It's great for my brain because I'm always learning something new that has nothing to do with Chinese medicine. So some sort of physical practice is really important. Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga, whatever works for you. But you got to move your body outside of the treatment room. And then I also, I have just other daily practices that I try to do. One is getting outside. That's really important to me, whether it's going for a walk or sitting on my porch or just like throwing the ball for my dog, getting outside. And then reading for pleasure is another really important one for me. Just reading, again, something that doesn't have to do with Chinese medicine, fiction, nonfiction, whatever. I got to read every day. That helps my brain. Okay, so we've talked about a lot. I am going to look through the Q&A now, and I will answer some questions, and then we'll take a break. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay. Do you have more than one acupuncturist performing CA at the same time? Yes, I do. How do you feel about having 2 acupuncturists per shift in a large space with 20 chairs taking out each other's needles in the event of a time jam? We do that all the time when we have 2 acupuncturists working at the same time. Yes, so we'll take each other's needles out. We just keep an eye on the dry erase board, and if I see, it's 2:15 and so's needles need to come out, even if I didn't treat them, I'll go ahead and take them out. I love working with another acupuncturist during a shift. I just find that it's more energizing and more fun. Recommendation for distal acupuncture courses. eLotus has great distal acupuncture courses. I would recommend anything that is a Master Dung course, Dung style acupuncture or balance method, Richard Tan. Great options on eLotus. How many people do you have on staff? I think I have 15 now. Yes, 8 acupuncturists and then support staff. Ever do any crystal work at the same time as needle insertion? No, I don't, because I don't know much about crystals, but I have patients who bring in their own crystals, and they will, they'll sort of like layer them on themselves. Um, what needle companies are you using? I get my needles from Golden Needle. They're a supplier on the East Coast, and we use AccuZone needles primarily. What size do you use? I use 36 and 38 gauge kind of interchangeably, and I use 1 sun and half sun length based on where in the body I am placing them. Will you be doing another course like this in the future? Maybe, we'll see. Did you say the circle method is good for practitioners with ADHD? I think that it probably is, because it is just so, it's so like streamlined and focused. How do you follow HIPAA privacy laws? I touched a bit on that yesterday. Chairs are spaced far enough apart so that patients aren't overhearing one another. And then we also use sound barriers. We use music and white noise machine. How do you use invisible reception and accept credit cards or payments or Venmo? So you can, some places will have sort of a self-pay kiosk with an iPad and like a square reader, and you just sort of train patients on how to use that. You can also, if you have an integrated payment system with your scheduler, you could just, and you require patients to have a card on file, you could just process those payments at the end of the day. And you could have patients, like if you're using the payment box, have them on the slip of paper write down credit card and the amount, put it in the box, and then you charge it at the end of the day if you've got their card on file. Or if you have like a handheld portable card reader, you could even just take it to the chair and process their payment right there at the chair. That's another option. Or Venmo. You can have patients Venmo you. Yeah. I do Japanese Kanpo, which requires hara palpating as a major diagnostic. Not sure if this style can be done in recliners. I don't have any experience with this, with doing abdominal diagnosis. If a patient needs to be like completely flat for hara diagnosis, then you might want to have treatment tables instead of recliners so that a patient can lay completely flat. Or you can look for recliners that recline really far back. We have some that go almost flat, so that might be enough. And as far as privacy goes, I treat people's abdomens all the time, put needles in them, and it's not really a privacy issue because nobody's watching anybody else in the treatment room, so it's fine. Do you treat people laying down posterior, like for sciatic pain? No, for sciatica, low back pain, I use distal treatments for that, and I don't do back treatments. So I treat everybody in a recliner. What do you pay your acupuncturists? I talked a bit about this yesterday. Our acupuncturists, our starting rate for a new hire is $25 per hour. And then their salary, and I pay people per hour, their salary quickly increases from there. Everybody gets a scheduled raise at least once a year, and I give bonuses every year as well. I have some acupuncturists who have been with me for years, and they're making closer to nearly $50 an hour. And they also get paid time off, paid CEUs, paid licensing, paid malpractice, retirement plan, free acupuncture, all kinds of benefits. Is it all cash or do you take insurance? I don't take insurance. It's all people pay, it's fee for service. Most community acupuncture clinics don't take insurance because there's just not really a need to with the low prices. But it is possible. There are a couple out there doing it. Okay, let's take a break. It is 25 past the hour. Let's take a 10-minute break. And if you have any other questions, go ahead and type those in the Q&A during break. We'll come back in 10 minutes and we'll keep going.